Well, folks, if you thought Republicans here in Cheyenne screwed gun owners on SEPA this session, wait till you hear what John Barrasso just did in Washington, D.C. Aaron Dorr here, guys, with Wyoming Gun Owners. Everyone knows that for months, WIGO has warned our members about the Violence Against Women Act in Washington, D.C. We call it VAWA for short. What it should be called is the Violence Against the Constitution Act. But of course, we're not naming the gun control bills in Washington, D.C. VAWA is a massive, massive bill, but tucked inside of there was a lot of gun control. Now, over the last couple of weeks and months, Senate Republicans have pulled some of that gun control out of there, but major gun control legislation remained inside of this bill. And so for Mitch McConnell and Senate Republicans in Washington, D.C., they're trying to find a way, how can we get our cake here and try to eat it too? So what they did was agreed to a deal that was brought to them by Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden's handlers in the White House. And these devious bastards took the gun control language out of VAWA and stuck it inside of H.R. 2471. This is the $1.9 trillion budget bill that passed into Congress just in the last week or 10 days. H.R. 2471 is almost 3,000 pages long. And so what the Republican rhinos in Washington, D.C. are hoping is that, you know what, those gun owners way the hell out there in Riverton or up in Cody or over next to the Utah border, they're never going to know what we did. They're not going to find out. They're not going to read this 3,000 page long bill. We can do this. They're never going to know about it, and we can enact the gun control language out of VAWA without ever having to vote on that bill. And that is exactly what John Barrasso did in Congress just last week. John Barrasso was the lone Republican from the Wyoming congressional delegation to vote yes on H.R. 2471. Now, I want to be clear on this. Only 18 Republican senators did this. Now, I'm not excusing those 18 at all, but out of the 50, almost all of them, as a percentage, said we're not going to betray gun owners in our states. But John Barrasso stabbed us in the back again, and he gave Joe Biden and he gave Chuck Schumer the votes they had to have to make this bill happen. Shameful behavior from John Barrasso. You know, Republicans helped draft this legislation, the Vawa Bill. Joni Ernst from Iowa was one of the lead Republicans who did that. And for that, they should be ashamed of themselves. But at least those rhinos were willing to openly say, we're going to try to pass gun control. What John Barrasso has done now is try to pretend he's not backing gun control because he made sure it was hidden in this bill. His deviousness, his attempt to trick gun owners makes him more guilty even than the Republicans who were openly sponsoring this trash in Washington, D.C. Disgusting stuff, because what they left in this bill or what they put now in this law is two major gun control provisions. The first one initiates a criminal investigation every time a gun owner fails a NICS check. Now, everyone knows a gun owner, maybe you yourself, who have failed a NICS check at a gun show or a gun store. Anytime you go to an FFL, they run a NICS check, and it's very easy to fail a background check. The reason, as we all know, as gun owners, is that 90%, almost 90% of NICS denials are false positives. Maybe the person who was prohibited has a similar birthday to you, the same address maybe as you, or a similar address. Maybe he or she had a similar last name. There's all kinds of things that can make you sound similar to someone who's prohibited, but it's not actually you. And that's why 90% of NICS denials are false positives. What John Barrasso just voted to do was to allow the system to kick out an automatic criminal report to your local law enforcement, having them go to your door to investigate every time that there's a false NICS, there's a NICS denial. So you're at the gun store on Dell Range in Cheyenne looking to buy a Glock. You get a denial through Nix. You don't know why. You damn sure know you're not prohibited. The guy says, I can't sell it to you. Come back in a couple days. You go home. That system, thanks to John Barrasso, is going to give a criminal report to the Cheyenne PD. And the Cheyenne PD will then come out to your house, knock on your door, and do a criminal investigation. All this does is set up a disaster between local law enforcement and gun owners, and it doesn't have to happen because, as we just said, almost all of these denials are false positives. John Barrasso knows this. He just doesn't care. He just doesn't care. He figured we're never going to find out about it. He figured nobody back home is going to know what I did. The other thing in this bill is language that would federalize Wyoming cops and Wyoming prosecutors. You see, Joe Biden and Merrick Garland know that Wyoming cops and prosecutors are not necessarily trying to enact and enforce his gun control agenda. And so what they've done with this bill is to set aside money to temporarily make Wyoming cops who are involved in the enforcement of these gun laws, make them temporary ATF agents. And then so the same bill makes our local prosecutors temporary United States attorneys. Then these violations will be prosecuted in federal court, not local court here in Wyoming, federal court. Then these prosecutors and these cops will no longer report to or work for taxpayers or gun owners here in Wyoming. No. They're now on the dole of, and they are reporting to, and they now work for Merrick Garland. They now work for, effectively, China Joe Biden. It's all designed to weaponize the system against gun owners, even though almost all of these cases are false positives. Now, this is why SAPA is so damn important, because it would stop all of this interagency task force work. And as you guys all know, the SAPA bill, which passed in the legislature this year, Senate File 102, would not preclude any of that. It was designed to allow for this. And so we have no protections. We have no protections. But again, this didn't have to happen. If John Barrasso would have actually had some cojones, he could have said, you know what, Mitch, I'm not going to vote for this. I'm not going to screw over gun owners in Wyoming. I'm not going to screw over taxpayers in Wyoming. For heaven's sakes, it's $1.9 trillion, John. Have you not gassed up your own car lately? Have you not bought a gallon of milk lately? Do you not see what's happening to our economy? This madman in the White House is spending every dime that he has and all the ones he doesn't have, destroying our economy, ballooning our deficits, destroying the purchase price of the dollar, and you simply just give him more, give him more, give him more. And again, not only that, you put gun control into this legislation. And people wonder, how come WIGO is so hard on Republicans? Folks, it's Republicans like this who made this happen. You see, we forced them to stall VAWA. All the pressure from gun owners, we forced them to stall VAWA. So Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden, if they wanted to get the votes to pass this budget bill, they had to get help from Republicans. The GOP could have held fast on that, like we forced them to do on VAWA, and killed both the bills. Could have happened. It could have happened. But John Barrasso did what he always does. He collapses under the pressure, and he conceded what Joe Biden wanted him to do, and he gave Chuck Schumer that yes vote. Does anybody know anybody here in Wyoming who called John Barrasso and said, hey, you know what, John? You should vote for H.R. 2471. You know, John, you should vote to send the police to gun owners' doors every time there is a Nix denial, even though almost all of them are false positives. Did anybody here in Wyoming tell John to do that? Did anybody tell him, you know, John, what we should do is we should federalize Wyoming cops and Wyoming prosecutors. And that way they can work for Merrick Garland, not for the local Wyoming taxpayers and gun owners. Nobody asked John to do this. Nobody. This is how much of a rhino John Barrasso is. He simply doesn't give a crap about what gun owners think. He thinks, more importantly, he thinks that, you know what? They're never going to find out. They're never going to find out. But thankfully, WIGO is here and on the prowl. We'll make sure you guys know what's going on because, the NRA never opposed any of VAWA. The NRA, in fact, was quietly behind the scenes working to support VAWA. The NRA did not lift a finger on email or social media anywhere to help stop VAWA. So if it hadn't been for state groups like WIGO, you would have heard about any of this. That's what these guys like. They like doing these things in secret, behind closed doors, smoke-filled rooms, hoping, praying that you'll never find out back home in the state of Wyoming. Guys, we will always inform you about this. There's a link below this video right here and some contact information. Make sure and contact John. Make sure and contact John. Say, John, you're an embarrassment. John, you're an idiot. John, you're selling out gun owners in the state of Wyoming. Who do you think you are? Who do you think you work for? Take a moment, guys. Hit the link. Contact John Barrasso. Let him know what a ridiculous decision it was to stab us in the back and pass a $1.9 trillion budget boondoggle, complete with multiple major gun control initiatives inside of it. Guys, and then if you're not involved yet with WIGO, it's time to get involved and join up as a member today. No one fights harder for you in the state capitol or in Washington, D.C. No one informs you what's happening, and nobody else will call out Republicans who are attacking our gun rights like John Barrasso did just last week in Washington, D.C. So, guys, get involved in that fight today. Join WIGO.com. Share our video. More information to come. We have got to stand up as gun owners and stand up now because there is no longer Republican versus Democrat in Washington, D.C. Instead, we have big government statists. We have people who are pushing tyranny versus people who fight for freedom. It's not about party anymore. It's about those who will fight for freedom and those who will choke under the pressure like John Barrasso and give our enemies everything they're asking for. Guys, join our fight today. Join WIGO.com. Take care.